bear with us for the next half an hour before the coffee starts again. My name's Michael Armstrong. I have Tom Harnash with us. We are from the Roundhouse Digital, a company that partners with Terminal 4 across a number of HE projects. We're here today. The slide talks about responsive websites, but what we've decided is, considering our place on the agenda and just before coffee, we thought it might be a good idea this afternoon to really fire a lot of ideas at you, so rather than focusing on one subject and going into it in great detail, keep you on your toes a little bit, provide you with a number of ideas, and then you can come and talk to us. We've got a stall outside throughout the rest of the day or tomorrow. So, we are a design agency based in the northeast of England, Newcastle specifically, so we're used to the weather like this. We're made up out of consultants, designers, developers, and as I've said, we partner with Terminal 4. So we've currently done a number of projects. If I planned this through, I'd probably know that number. We could count it on about 3 hands, and we're doing quite a few already, and obviously a number of you in the room will recognise us. So, as we've said, what we want to talk about is what you can be doing right now. It's really easy for us to get up in front of you and say, everybody needs to redesign their website from the ground up. You need a new information architecture, you need to do X, Y, and Z. We realise that that's just not feasible. So, what we're going to do is, as we said, fire a number of hints and tips, some ideas, and some things that relate back to what Piero was just talking about, to consider how you can improve your website, focusing a lot on responsive design. So, user engagement is obviously really important. This needs to be thought from the very beginning of any site that you do, and tracked throughout everything that we do. A number of topics that we're going to start talking about, heat mapping being the first. So this here is a representation of York St John's website. It's a project that we're just starting with Terminal 4 now. We implement this software on the site to really track how users are using the site. Now this is a simple representation where all of the white dots show returning visitors and all of the red dots show new visitors. This is really good information to show that every change that you make on the website, you can track how that's implemented and how users are responding to it. The software that we use tracks a number of different metrics as well, so you can compare users from different countries, you can see how people are scrolling through the site, but you can also watch out for things that you might have done wrong. So we have a number of sites where people have put images in that aren't linked through, and you'll find that users are trying to click on these quite a lot. So again, it's a matter of iteratively reviewing everything that you do and continually changing it. Similarly, as mentioned, the use of Google Analytics. I'm guessing from the back you can't read this slide, as I can't from the front. But trust me when it says it contains really interesting information. We use Google Analytics to have a look and compare the user journeys that people take through the site. So this is the same York St John website compared with the UK users and then similarly the US users. Now, looking at the two, there's an obvious difference there just in the shape. But again, a lot of the universities that we deal with say, well, we must have different websites for the Oriental market, the Chinese market in particular, because there's a vast difference between what they want and what home students want. However, this shows automatically that there's a vast difference between what the US market want and the UK market want. So even within the same language, we need to consider how different users use the site, and the personalisation that comes with that, and how that can be managed through the Terminal 4 system. So, to continue stating the obvious, and moving on to the bleeding obvious, making the site easy to navigate. It's really simple, but yet really important. We see a lot of times where people try and be too funky. They bring in design agencies where everything needs to look pretty, everything needs to look a little bit unique. However, it just doesn't work for users, and at the end of the day, that's what's most important. We've got an example here of the site that we did. This is the University of Sunderland's microsite in London. And just a simple navigation techniques, making a sticky menu so that whenever users are scrolling down, they can always navigate back. It's always clear where they need to go next. Having said all of that with regards to navigation, it's always important to emphasise the information above the navigation. You can have all of the navigation techniques in the world, but as always, content is king. So how does this work on mobile devices? Obviously, or perhaps not obviously, mobile users gravitate towards the centre. So primary content should always be in the centre of the screen. And you need to consider that when designing for mobile devices. Secondary content can be stacked or can be moved towards the edges, but just consider this in terms of page refreshes and structures. So, calls to action, obviously everybody's got them, assuming everybody's got them, but how can they be used well? To state the obvious again, if there are tasks that you want your users to complete, make it obvious. So again, a number of times we've seen design agencies that make everything look particularly special, but they don't think about the obvious. The Newcastle University site postgraduate here that we've done, again, making it really clear what we want the users to do. Strong calls to action to visit us, to sign up in the applications portal, and even in the areas that we whited out, you can see the request to prospectus and the contact buttons. So again, making it really clear and really obvious what everybody needs to do. Use of language. So, in terms of university sites in particular, this is a personal rant of mine. Please understand your audience and speak their language. The number of times we have conversations, particularly with senior academics, about inclusion of program detail on websites. We need to be calling them courses. We need to be calling them what the users call them. An example is the difference between careers. We speak the same language as our users, so it's getting the career that you want. Be more engaging for the audience that you need to be. Moving swiftly to the aesthetic focus. So obviously as a design agency this is very important to us. These are the areas that we're going to cover, starting with white space and readability. In short, is your content easy to read? Before I move on to the next slide, I do apologise in advance for my Irish. We're going to show the example of a slide for the Irish Environment Agency, which I believe is still pronounced Chuggers. Thank you, yes, but I got it so wrong throughout the entire project, I did get laughed out of Carlo. The example here, again, sorry, apologies, this is difficult to read, but making sure that your line length is correct. So always consider, you don't need to spread the number of words out across the entire page, as per the left-hand side, but do use line breaks, so it doesn't need to fill the entire space. There is an optimum line length, and obviously again, as the quote says, placing text in 11-point font and cramming into the bottom of the page just won't deliver the experience that your readers crave. So just consider what the user is going to do and the fatigue that the eye suffers when looking at long line lengths. Colour. So, as the slide shows, 63% use the accessibility settings on softwares and mobile phones. But what does that really mean? What we're talking about is when we are designing websites, we always consider the accessibility needs from a colour perspective as well as everything from the size of the font, etc. So what we need to be doing is designing in a way in which text that is overlaid is readable both in the colour versions and in black and white. But also, devices that we use in colour versions need to be seen on the black and white versions too. So in the above example, we used a mouse over a highlight when somebody has clicked on a specific link to show the active state. And beneath, that needs to be seen also for those people who can't see colour. And likewise, the white text on the colour image, if we were to use a separate colour, when it comes to black and white or grayscale, that might be different. So again, it's considering all of the different user types that you've got. This is my second personal rant that we're coming up to, which is all about relevant imagery. Stage photography can have a really negative effect on your brand. The number of times we see this in universities is amazing. If I was to come to your campus and see a group of students sitting under a tree, looking at a book and being happy, I will redesign your website for free. Twice. This just doesn't happen. And users are savvy to it. You know, the young audience aren't going to go, fantastic, I get to pay £9,000 to go to an institution that makes me read a book, and boy, my friends and I are happy about this. Let's read. You have to be as honest as possible with your photography, as well as with all of your content, but your photography really shows. These are examples that we've taken ourselves around universities. We've got Lancaster, York St John, Heriot Watt. These are real life students that sometimes they've known about it, others they haven't, but we've shoved a camera in their face and just taken photos. That's exciting, that's real, and that will be engaging to your users. So please remember that. Hit areas, specifically when we're talking about mobile phones. In darts, hitting the bullseye is harder to do than hitting any other part of the dartboard. This is because the bullseye is the smallest target. Again, points are stating the bleeding obvious. However, when it comes to mobile devices, we need to be considering that. We need to be considering how people are using the site, whether or not we activate links to click on or have strong calls to action. But it needs to be as strong as possible and really obvious, and give people a number of options in which they can click through. So again, with the Newcastle site here, allowing them to click on both the call to action, the date, the title of the news article before accessing the site itself. So from a UX perspective, there are a number of things that I've just thrown at you. I'm just about on time, and I'm going to hand over to Tom now to talk about personalisation and the technical aspects.
I'm Tom, I'm a senior developer at the Roundhouse. So today I'm going to focus on personalisation. Bear with me, I've got 40 slides to get through in about 10 minutes, so I'm going to go through really quick. Businesses have seen an increase in revenue of up to 19% using personalisation techniques. This is taken from e-commerce, so take it with a pinch of salt, but it's a bit of a hint of how personalisation can help you. So through this, you can personalise by using referrers, recommendations, location, and network. So going on to referrers, landing pages have average of an 80% bounce rate. So how can you improve this? Imagine you've got a UG landing page, and the user has landed on it straight from Google, and they don't know anything about the university because they've landed on it straight from Google. Quite a few higher education landing pages that we've seen don't have any of the USP messaging that's on the homepage that could be on the university undergraduate landing page. So putting these sorts of personalizations in, knowing more about the users and where they've come from, can help to personalize the experience for the user. The next one is recommendations. The conversion rate is 5.5 times higher from clicking a recommendation than directly visiting the page. So use your call to actions really wisely. If you know that a user has clicked quite a few times in the undergraduate area, make these call to actions that should be global and should be quite up on top of the page and quite prominent. Make them relevant to the user based upon the activities that they've done on the site. The next one is using location. Now this is quite obvious, but you can use instant segmentation based upon where a user is located. So 90% of consumers find custom content useful, and we saw this in the case of Daniel, which is a client of ours, and they have a lot of Chinese students, and Chinese students prefer historic buildings because they sort of look like Harry Potter, and they like that. And this is compared to the home students which want to go to Bangor for the outdoor activities, so they can want pictures of mountain biking and the hills and everything like that. So the content was, got historical buildings, and also as well got quotes at the bottom from actual international students as well. The next one is quite interesting, and it's based upon the network. Mobile data traffic is predicted to increase by 60% from 2015 to 2017. And 47% of users expect a page to load in less than 2 seconds. So more people are going to be using mobile data, accessing your site from mobile networks, and 47% of users expect a page to load in less than 2 seconds. Couple that with 40% of users that abandon a website that takes longer than 3 seconds to load, means that you need to personalize by prioritizing content. So, for example, if you're accessing a course page with a mobile data connection, if you have a slider at the top of the page with 3 images, how about just tone that down to one simple image? Or even better, just replace this with plain text to convey your message. And don't forget as well, this can apply to people accessing your site both on mobile and desktop through mobile data connections. And sorry, just to go back to this point, this can be done by using GeoIP databases, which can give you some information quite quickly if they're accessing via mobile data connection, or if they're accessing more via a faster ADSL plus upwards connection. The next one I'm going to focus on is optimisation, and a delay greater than 1 second will interrupt a user's thoughts. So Google researchers found this, and each second delay in load time leads to a 7% user dropout, and 25% of users expect mobile sites to perform the same as the desktop equivalent. So it's incredibly important that a page is performant and responsive to the user's needs. There's actually a few ways that you can do this, and one of them is education for editorial users. I think a lot of people try and throw automated approaches to this, but actually it's really simple just to educate the editorial users. And one of the big ones is images. We've just done a simple research experiment, and images on average across quite a few higher education websites could be compressed by 38%. And this is an average saving of 1,200 kilobytes. Now, in terms of time and data connection, this would save 56 seconds on an edge device. 3G, on 3G it would save 5 seconds, and 4G will save 1 second. And just to sort of link it back to the dropout rates, on edge this will reduce dropout rates by 392%, all the way to 4G by 7%. So you can see the effect of just even compressing some images can have an effect on the dropout rates of your website. The next one is prioritizing visible content. Now this is a bit more of a technical one, but 3G connections can experience up to 300 millisecond latency. So what this means is that it simply takes up to 300 milliseconds to fetch a site resource. Some pages don't render fully until all the resources have been downloaded, and these are known as blocking requests. So what you can do differently is, to make sure that this doesn't happen, is start to present the information to the user on the page whilst the page is downloading the rest of the site, and this is known as non-blocking. So imagine you are opening a page and the styles come in as a slider. The user can still see the content, and they can start to assimilate the information. Once it's all downloaded, it starts to initiate, and then the user starts interacting with the site. They've already engaged quickly, instead of sort of seeing a white screen, looking at that, getting bored, and then waiting to then assimilate the information. And there's another technique as well, which is quite new in the terms of sort of infrastructure and DevOps, and it's called web content optimization. So you've got a user. This user, for example, is based in America, and you've got the site which is hosted on a server in Ireland. The user connects to this site and fetches the web page. Web content optimization, there's a server that sits in the middle that does some clever things for us. It can detect the network that the user's on, and then can make a few decisions based upon that. So, for example, it can polish the images, So it can make them smaller, it can compress them, what we'll talk about earlier automatically. It can minify and compress the CSS and JavaScript and CSS, and also as well, it automatically applies a CDN, which is almost best practice. Sorry, CDN is Content Delivery Network. So this, in the case of the American users before, instead of having to go all the way to Ireland to fetch the content, it just fetches the content from a server in America. And what's even better about this as well is that it can also cache the HTML content onto the content delivery network. So instead of even getting the HTML from the server in Ireland, it's got it from the American data center, which also increases the performance of the site. And we've actually taken a quick video of one of our sites in comparison. So on the left-hand side, we've got without web content optimization. On the right-hand side, we've got with content optimization. And these tests are ran from Hong Kong. So if I just play this, you can see it's sort of, they're acting quite quickly and quite the same there. And the web content optimization has realized it's a mobile device and accessing from Hong Kong, delivered the resources much quicker. The web content optimization server is hosted in Ireland. So it's automatically applied some polishing techniques and also delivered content from the service places. And it's a really simple thing to do. All you have to do is just place a server in front of the other server and let it take care of the rest for you. Realise that we're sort of pushed for time, so if you have any questions, just come and catch us afterwards or in the bar over a nice pint of Guinness, and I'd love to talk to you more. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're